Good evening and welcome to the Garfield Heights City School District Special Board Meeting Work Session. Today is Monday, September 11th, 2023. I call tonight's meeting to order. Mr. Oko, can I have roll call, please?
Mr. Isom, Ms. King,
Here.
Mrs. Morrison,
Here.
Ms. Thomas,
Here.
Mrs. Daniels.
Here. Can I have a motion to amend tonight's agenda to add a motion to appoint President Pro Temp?
So moved. Second.
That was moved by Ms. Thomas and second by Ms. Morrison. Can we have roll call, please?
Yes. Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Morrison,
Yes.
Ms. King,
Yes.
Mrs. Daniels.
Yes. At this time, I would like a motion to appoint Vice President Malek King as President Pro Temp for tonight's meeting.
So moved. Second.
That was moved by Ms. Morrison, second by Ms. Thomas. Can I have roll call, please?
Ms. Morrison,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. King,
Yes.
Mrs. Daniels.
Yes. Ms. King will be officiating today's meeting as President Pro Tem.
Thank you, President Daniels. First on our agenda is a presentation, so Dr. Reynolds, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Tonight, Michael Sharp will be,
Before we do that, we adopt the agenda first.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, could I get a motion to adopt this evening's agenda as revised?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Oko, that was moved by Ms. Daniels and second by Ms. Thomas. Could we get roll call, please?
Mrs. Daniels,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Morrison,
Yes.
Ms. King.
Yes. All right, back to you, Dr. Reynolds.
all right, thank you, ma'am. Tonight, we'll have a presentation from Michael Sharp with Squire Patton and Boggs. I wanted the opportunity to present some options for us moving forward in regards to levies. Thank you, sir.
You can just come up here.
Like just stand here? We'll have to split the,
You can
come on
Yeah, yeah.
into the interrogation circle. I've fallen for that one before. Hi, I'm Mike Sharp. I'm from Squire Patton Boggs. You probably remember dealing with my former partner, Rick Maniloff, who I worked with very closely over many years and who has decided to move on to become law director of the county. And so as part of that, I'm working with you all in your bond issue and tax levy matters. So good evening, it's good to be here. A little history. You have a couple of voted tax levies, one of which is coming up for last collection, and it'll be next year, so collection year, next year after this election cycle, so collection year 25. And that is really the basic subject matter for this evening. You have one other voted tax levy that comes up for last collection in 27, and I'll mention that for a reason here in just a second. So whenever a levy comes up, the question, I feel bad with my back too.
All right.
That doesn't make any sense. Basically, every board asks itself, well, what do we do with this levy when it comes up for renewal or something? And I guess I would say right now let's summarize what you have first. You have a levy that produces $5.35 million a year. In our business, it's called an emergency levy. It's really a bad name, but that's what they're called. There's no present emergency I'm aware of, no buildings are on fire or anything like that. It's just a term of art for a levy in Ohio which produces a fixed amount of money. So this one, you'll levy a fixed amount of money, and over the years, as your tax valuation changes, your amount of millage you have to levy to produce that amount changes, but the amount of money that you're getting is constant throughout the levy. It was last viewed by the voters in 15, where the voters approved the renewal of two different such levies into one. So there was an old 2.5 and an old 2.85 million. Those were renewed together, hold that thought, into one levy. And sort of like, the way I usually think of it is, it's like a cup of coffee when you put the cream in, you stir it up, there is no pulling those individual levies back out now. When they were approved in 15, they became one. So it's just the one levy that we have to deal with. It ran for 10 years, and so time flies, and here we are. Basically, I would say 4 different conceptual options, and I'm going to hit them all, even though they're not all worthy of a lot of attention, but I think it's just good to know what options are. The first thing you can do is nothing, which is just let it ride, and then after 25, you would no longer have the authority to collect that money, but I'm guessing the treasurer is going to jump up and tackle me if we say anything else about that option, but it's one of them that are out there. The second option, a second option, would be to ask voters to renew it, basically taking exactly what you have and kicking it forward for another term of years. And under statute, that can be any number of years up to and including 10, which is the statutory maximum for this kind of levy. Third is you could, as was done in 15, think about a renewal that also tries to bring with it the other levy that's outstanding that won't last collect until 27. It's the same technique that was used in 15. I would say, there some of those arguments from that time probably are here, but at some point you start to get a too many eggs in one basket problem, that the levy becomes so large and there's so much at risk that to put it out and then have things, maybe even things wholly outside of your control. Maybe we get close to the election and there's this piece of horrible news of some sort, nothing to do with you, but people come out in force, they vote against everything, and then we'd have a real problem. So a combination renewal would be the third. And the fourth and more esoteric option is something called a substitute levy, which is admittedly fairly complicated. Many, many years ago, I drafted the legislation to create this thing. The gist of it is it's a kind of levy which is an offshoot of an emergency levy. Basically, it remains a levy where you produce the same amount, or you target a fixed amount of money each year. The difference is that there is some possibility for the growth in that dollar amount, dependent wholly upon new valuation being created in the community. So it's a levy that was really designed for and is used by districts that are in a fast growth mode. Lots and lots of economic development, lots of new projects. They're seeing tax values rise sharply, and there has been some success in those districts, but it's also candidly a little hard to explain the mechanisms of it. And so given that, I'm not sure it's a perfect fit for you. I think the thinking right now is that the best fit here is just a simple renewal, that you would go out to your voters and ask them to just simply give us what you're already giving us for 10 more years. And what that would mean is you would be able to very accurately say no increase, because literally the same amount of money that it produces now, it will produce in the future. It will probably, knock on wood, probably over time result in less millage. Example, back in 15, when this exact levy was put on the ballot, the estimated millage was 17.4. I'm just guessing, to hold me to this, I'm thinking it's going to come in more like 13.7-ish this time. So just the natural increase of your tax valuation, some of which is real growth, some of which is inflationary, but all of that will act to drop the millage number. But the key point for you all is you get the same amount of money. However, the mechanism, nobody's giving you anything anymore, and so the marketing of this, if you will, the engagement with the community ends up being fairly straightforward. And as I said, the statutory maximum is 10. It's the most common term that's used, primarily to combat voter fatigue, so you don't have to be on the ballot more than you need to be. And so you would ask for 10. Again, that's what it was last time. And this is unique to emergency levies, but because it last collects in 25, your first opportunity to do this is the primary election the year before the last year of collection. So if you think of 25, the primary of the year before of that is going to be, lo and behold, it'll be this spring coming up. So it'll be the presidential primary in 24. Just real quick to note, that's not May, as you're used to. In presidential years, it slides back into March unless the General Assembly changes that. So it'll be March 19 of 24. And so although that seems like a really long way away, or at least it did to me before I sat down and thought about it, believe it or not, the deadlines for making filings for that election do occur inside of calendar year 23. And so I think the current thinking is to present resolutions that would be considered next month and the month after for a comfortable filing in advance of the deadline, which occurs in December of 2023. And it will be in the form of a resolution brought to the board. As I was telling Phil, it does not require a supermajority, so it would need, in the instance tonight where you have 4, it would need 3 of the 4. If there are only 3, it would need 3, and so on and so forth. And the second resolution will be the same thing. In between, what will happen is the county fiscal officer will certify the estimated millage that it will take to produce that fixed sum of dollars. And like I said, I'm guessing that's going to be in the 13s somewhere. But again, the ballot will very much say a renewal of an existing tax, da-da-da-da-da. So that's the gist of why I'm here, is to give you a little background on that. That I think is the option that's being considered, let you know what the other options legally are, so that if you are asked, you will know that there were other items under consideration, and give you a forewarning that we'll be bringing those forward at a future, I guess not a future, but in an October board meeting. So I'll pause. I'm really good at just sort of, yeah, but I will pause now, and I'm glad to answer questions on this or anything related.
Any questions from the board?
Yes, I have a few.
Okay,
Thank you for your presentation today.
my pleasure.
And bringing this before the board, early enough for us to, have the presentation and then give us some opportunity to ask questions and get feedback and things of that sort. When you said that, it'll be a resolution in October, November, do we have to pass 2 resolutions or just one, or do it have to be read more than once?
It's a good question. No, there are 2 different resolutions. So the sequence for these kinds of things is there's an initial resolution, some call it the resolution of necessity, call it resolution number 1 because it's easier to remember. That gets then adopted and delivered to the county. The county will provide a 1-pager in the form of a certification as to your total tax valuation and the amount of mills and some other data, amount of mills it will take to raise that fixed sum dollar of the levy, and there will be some other data that is required now to be included in that certification. That comes to us. We then use that to prepare a second resolution, totally different action, and then that will go on a different agenda. So it's not multiply reading one, it's 2 different separate pieces that can be done in just one board meeting.
Okay. Phil,
Yes.
were you prepared to answer any questions as it relates to this tonight?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
What impact will it have on the district? I'm not sure if you know the history as to why the purposes of the district moving forward with this levy 10 years ago, but what impact would the loss of 5.5 million have on the district? Is this operating funds? Are we using this for capital improvements? What is the purpose of this 5.5 million? And do we have an idea of what will be the consequences of not having 5.5 million a year?
Yeah, so it'll stop collecting and it'll almost split in half. So in fiscal year of 2026, we will basically lose 2.5 million of that 5.3. And then the following year, we lose that full amount because it's always a year behind in taxes. Now, the impact is these are general operating dollars. We fund our teachers, we fund our core programming with these dollars. These are not capital improvement dollars, or these are not bond retirement dollars. Those are separate collections. We have a permanent improvement levy. This is general money for our teachers' core operating funds. The loss of $5.3 million to the general fund would mean significant loss in teachers. We'd have to cut teachers. The number of that, we'd have to do an analysis, but it would be upwards of 30 plus. Because our pay scale I mean, we start our folks off at 40,418 this year. And if we need to make up $5.3 million in core funding, 85% of our expenditures as a district go to salaries and benefits. So our staffing would be the number one, we look at staffing first, and that is the direct impact of loss of these funds. This is not a building fund, this is not a bond retirement fund, this is general operating money that the district needs. So if we do that, if we were to lose that, we would be, we'd have a excess of expenditure in fiscal 2026 of negative $3.5 million. We'd be spending more than we'd be taking in by then. And our fund balance would drive significantly farther down from there. I mean, we would be in violation of state budgetary law at that point. We do not have the cash reserve to withstand a loss revenue hit of $5.3 million. And I would argue that no district in the state has the ability to do that sustainably over time. So, and then I can also forecast that over in November when we go through and we can have a more detailed idea of, you know, an exact number of what we would have to cut if we did not renew this levy. This is, it's not permanent, we don't get this money permanently, so it is forecasted as us losing it down the line because it's not a given that the community will support and pass this. So does that answer the question?
Yes, absolutely. And when do we wait for, when would those, if we had to make cuts, that would start? Like, if we're looking at our 5-year, our 3-year forecast, or our forecast for the next fiscal year or a few fiscal years out,
Yeah.
those cuts would have to happen sooner.
Yes, so to mitigate the impacts in 2026, the renewal amount would be $2.7 million. We would have to mitigate that almost immediately to kind of withstand both the COVID, the ESSER ARP money impact that the district is mitigating currently, but then also a general operating fund loss like this would, it would be a significant, we'd have to make significant changes. It would not be a rolling, you know, 5 positions here, 5 positions here. It would have to be significant core changes right off the bat. We are addressing this early, as Mr. Sharp said, we are addressing this as soon as we can, and we're trying to get this in front of you guys as soon as we can. But as fast as we get it in front of you, we also have very limited time to mitigate those shortfalls in funding if it does not pass in the timeline. The collect end years 2025, correct?
Correct.
So 2026, not passed, that's when we start, we will not see the collections coming from the county anymore.
We can't afford for that to happen.
We cannot
Not for, just for our students.
Correct.
We need everybody in place. And we need all of our educators and our staff in order to ensure that we are serving our students appropriately. How much does this cost, like the average taxpayer per 100,000? Do we know that yet?
So since this is a renewal levy, it would be no increase in tax. When we get the millage, around 13 mills, we can base it off of that. It just, it depends on the valuation of the properties in Garfield Heights and then taking that millage and kind of calculating it. The important thing to recognize with this is that it's a set dollar amount. So we're only collecting what is approved. We're not, the millage is going to change to just collect that amount.
Okay.
So I think the ballot language will say on it, it's renewing an existing levy. And I mean, there is no increased collection in millage for this type of levy. It's just renewing what we currently get, nothing more.
If, in the event that it does not pass, are we foreseeing any support once these ESSER funds come down with the Fair, School Funding Act and things of that sort? Is there anything legislatively that we foresee, you know, like Plan B, to ensure that we sustain the district and our services to our students as best as possible?
So, that's kind of a dual-edged sword there, right? The Fair School Funding Plan was beneficial to our district in this year. The Fair School Funding Plan does not take into account the second year of its implementation, the appraisal value increases, the expenditure inflationary growth. So while we will see a bump in state funding in this fiscal year, next fiscal year it's gonna be less. And there's no guarantee that they will continue to fund this plan after the 2 years. They are adamant about not going past 2 years. Our enrollment will also play a piece in this as well. The Fair School Funding Plan is great if we're a formula district, but with enrollment changing and enrollment trends, it is possible that we can slide back down. And they eliminated the year after year guarantee for school districts in Ohio. So this year we're projected to get unrestricted grants in would be 23.4 million. The guarantee for any district is not this year. For next year, it would slide all the way back to pre-COVID, which is about $17.5 million. So districts we have to look at these variables because we are 73.5% state funded. Our local capacity is $1,900 and about $5,500 from the state is what makes up a per student payment we get per month. So I would not rely on the state to come in and fill this gap. In fact, I would almost have the mindset that they will not come and fix a funding shortfall. Instead, they will look to us very soon. If the renewal doesn't pass in March, we will be getting letters from them to have a plan in place to start looking at the funding shortfalls. Because they see it on our forecast, what's going with the renewal not there.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank
That's
you.
all I have, Ms. King.
Are there any other questions? The one question that I have is how many opportunities do we have to put this in front of the taxpayers?
It's a good question. It ends up being 4. Because this is an emergency levy, you get the primary and the general election, which is all that the General Assembly has left to us now. The Augusts and the Februarys have disappeared. And so, unlike any other levy, an emergency levy can be at that primary. So you'll get primary general in '24, primary general in '25. And if it hasn't been renewed by that point, that's when it just ceases.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, Mr. Sharp, thank you very
My
much
pleasure.
for coming this evening and providing us with the information. It was very user-friendly, the way that you broke it down into 4 different, you have a question?
Yes, one more quick question.
Yes.
It just came to me after you said we have 4 chances to put it on the ballot. What is the cost to the district? Because I remember it being a cost to the district every time we put something on the ballot.
It's statutory. I don't know. The Board of Elections can usually forecast, and thankfully, because you're at a presidential primary, all of your precincts should be fired up, which means you should get to ride coattails. So I would forecast a minimal cost for both of the elections in '24.
For history, in May, it costs about $60,000.
How much?
$60,000 to put our ballot measure. It was very high. It's usually not that high, but again, it was the May primary, so we had to get the precincts up.
It just depends a lot on if there's anything else going on, because if there isn't, whoever's on bears a big, big chunk of cost. Something like a presidential primary should have everything open by default, which should keep the cost very, very low.
Thank you. Any other questions? Again, Mr.
My
Sharp,
pleasure.
thank you very much for spending your evening with us and
Anytime.
providing such a informational presentation that was easy to understand.
Well, good. I'll try. If you do have questions later, let Phil know and I'll get you your answers. All right, thank you.
Very much. All right, next on our agenda is the tentative agenda review. So we have in front of us our agenda for our regular board meeting of September 18th, 2023. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns about our tentative agenda? Phil, there's one thing on here that we need to add, and that is the resolution for the treasurer and the superintendent raises.
Yes, the lawyers are working on the resolution for that. I know previously, I looked at the one that was passed last year. There's a certain statutory, so our legal team is putting that together
Okay.
from what, yes. It'll
And
be
so
on-
so
Yes. So
we'll
it'll,
just need a placeholder for that.
there is one, it's 9.1. It should be, it just says approve the
Oh, got
right
it.
now. I have the resolution number and I'm just waiting on the resolution
Got
for
it.
it, and we'll get that on.
That was gonna be one of my other questions, is what that was.
This is not like very, very complete, is it?
It's, in regards to what is,
There were just like a few things that I just looked at that might be typos or,
yes,
fillers
yeah.
for the
There-
moment.
Some of it's fillers, we, wanted to get it in front of you so you knew it was coming.
Okay.
And then, there's been some hiring that's been going on this week, but we wanted to get the placeholder on so you knew that you'd be voting on these folks. We couldn't obviously put it on without having the names of people who are gonna be hired, but, it is something that we would like you to see before, so you know what's going on in this week.
But their names will be on here by the time.
Correct. Yes, and if they're not ready, we'll pull it, and, yeah, it will. And we are looking to get that done, I think, midweek, is the way that we're looking right now.
And then we'll have a couple of presentations as well from teaching and learning and also special ed. Just kind of giving an update. The other items are generally our some hires that we've had as well. There's a bus purchase intent resolution as well. A couple of items that we want to add on. One is Ohio Online. We were looking for opportunities to ensure that we were able to respond to the needs of all of our students. We are creating criteria for a possibility of an additional alternative for our kids who are have the most needs. So we will be presenting Ohio Online as an alternative. We're actually just piloting the Ohio Online just to ensure that we have everything available for that. In addition, proposal for to respond to the needs of the middle school with windows. We are working on that as well. We actually just got the information today that we need to provide to the board.
With the Ohio Online, is that credit recovery, or is it more of individual pathways created for students to help catch them up?
Well, this is a situation for our students who have the most need. How we used it in other districts is students who have severe illnesses, who may not be able to make it in the building, having it as an option for them and just to help our families. Again, we'd like to pilot this instead of just kind of going full force, because I want to make sure there is criteria for our students to be able to have this as an option. And this is targeting our most serious issues for our children. We want to ensure that we have an option available for them as well.
Are there any other questions in regards to anything on the agenda, and in particular, the last couple of things that Dr. Reynolds has brought up as being, that will be added to the agenda?
With the Ohio Online, didn't we used to have another program, something like that started with a B? Yeah, what's the name of that?
There were some things that we've done in the past that
Mhm.
did not have the structures that I'm looking for.
Okay.
This Ohio Online is approved by the state, obviously, but it goes through the ESC. This allows there to ensure that there are checkpoints that we are keeping in touch with our children, that we are keeping updates on where our children are, and not just kind of trusting the process. I needed something like that because we could lose our children with situations like this where we're just saying, hey, here's an online tool, and there are no real guides along the way. The ESC has created opportunity for there to be checkpoints, there to be attendance as well, just to ensure that this doesn't become something that is subpar to what we're expecting our children to have. That's why we're pursuing Ohio Online.
With the hopes of eventually, if possible, they can transition back
Yes.
into traditional classrooms without a huge gap.
Exactly, that's exactly right. We don't want to create gaps for any of our students, so we want to ensure that if we're going to create something that's online, that is something that is not going to have the outcomes that we've had in the past with, or any district has had in the past with what happened with COVID. So we need to ensure that we had something that was very structured, that children also had opportunities to, so our children who are in programs like this will still need to come in and test with us. So we need to ensure that we are giving them instruction that is allowing them to continue to grow as students, so that the opportunities aren't limited by the time they become seniors because they don't have all the things that they need, or the level of rigor of the program isn't there, or those structures to just maintain, to stay in front of them aren't there. So that's why I wanted to make sure that we pursue, because we could have done some things, but I need for us to have a little more structure in some of the process that we have right now. That's what that is.
And is this a self-paced, or are they actually logging in and there's teachers instructing?
They're kind of checkpoints. They're asynchronous, so they're going at their pace. However, they're checkpoints to ensure that we're not falling so far behind that by the end of the semester or by the end of the year, it actually goes from semester to semester. So it's not anything where someone's going to go entire year and then like, oh my goodness, they're so far behind, it's going to take them another half a year. No, we know exactly where they are throughout this. And that's, they're required to provide those sort of supports for our students. And that's why they were the ones, and this system was the ones that I wanted to pursue.
What grade levels?
Right now, we're piloting this thing for 9 to 12. But I do want us to get to the point where we are looking at some of our children who may have some illnesses in some of our earlier grades, but I want us to get it right first. I need for us to get it right. So that's why we want to pilot this thing and not just kind of be completely open and like anyone can apply for this. We are looking for our students with the highest of needs, and that's what we're doing right now.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I do have a question. 18.2, the parking lot resolution. Can you give me a little bit of information on the policy and procedure? What are we talking about here?
Yeah, so right when Al was leaving and transitioning over, he and Doug Dillon worked on a resolution brought by Doug Dillon, our security officer at the district, regarding parked vehicles overnight in our parking lots. I think this is to tow them away after a certain period of time if they're still in our parking lots for safety security reasons, provided by a tow company, no cost to the district, but that's the gist of the parking lot resolution, that Doug Dillon, it was supposed to be in front of you guys last March, obviously didn't get there to you. Coming up now before Doug retires here in September.
September already?
Yeah.
I don't see the resolution on
It's-
there.
Our lawyers are taking one last peek at that one too.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, and it's for overnight.
Yes, yeah, it's a 24-hour, if it's the vehicle sitting there for, I believe it's 24 hours or more, it would be removed from the premise.
Any other questions on the tentative agenda? If not, we will move on to 8.2, which are board conferences. There are several conferences that are coming up that I wanted to make sure that the board was aware of, so that if you're interested in attending, you can work with Phil and Teresa to make those arrangements. The are you doing a group registration for Capitol Conference and the lodging?
So.
Because there's a special system
We have a
with them.
special code that came through, the registration's done, the lodging opens up, I believe this week. Miss Betty Hedges is on top of
Okay.
the lodging, she's gonna take care of it for you guys. And then you guys, were all registered, so everyone who is interested in going is registered for that.
Okay, and just let Phil know if you're unable to make it,
Yes.
so that he can take you off of that list. Capitol Conference is November 12th through the 14th in Columbus. The National School Board Association is April 6th through April 8th, and that's in New Orleans. And the COSBA National Conference is February 22nd through the 25th in Dallas. So I just wanted the board to be aware of those upcoming events, in case you are interested in attending and expanding your leadership abilities. Any questions about board conferences?
No, just Phil, if you can find out, I know in the past, we offer board member elects that were elected an opportunity to join us at Capitol Conference. Really encouraged it because it had some really good initial training, and by being an election year, we may have a board member elect coming on that week before. So just maybe find out how, to make sure we have everything we have in order, just in case we need to add someone. I know a lot of districts do it, so. And that's normally what we do, so that'll be like our first contact. If we have a new board member elect, to offer them the opportunity to join us at Capitol Conference.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Is there anything else for the good of the order? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting at 7:43.
6:40.
Ooh, 6:43.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Oko, that was moved by Ms. Thomas and second by Ms. Daniels. Could I get roll call?
Ms. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Daniels?
Yes.
Ms. Morrison?
Yes.
Ms. King?
Yes. Meeting adjourned.